Minister Shanmugam.
Thank you, sir, for letting me join this debate. I would like to say a couple of things and then ask some questions of Mr. Leong. Mr. Leong has said that CICA is not the PSP's main concern, but it has been thrust upon them by the government. The motion today, would you not agree, shows what he says to be untrue. It specifically refers to CICA, and may I remind him on what it says? That this Parliament calls upon the government to take urgent and concrete action to address the widespread anxiety among Singaporeans on jobs and livelihoods caused by the foreign talent policy and the provisions of the movement of natural persons in some free trade agreements like CICA. And this is not something that's thrust upon the PSP or Mr. Leong. I think you will know that at the launch of PSP on the 3rd of August 2019, Dr. Tan Cheng Bock made it a point to emphasize that PSP was targeting CICA. And since entering Parliament, Mr. Leong, you have repeatedly commented on CICA, comments which carry clear racial undertones. For example, your post on the 22nd of June 2021, the most important economic policies, I quote, that have affected the jobs and livelihoods of Singaporeans relate to foreign PMETs and free trade agreements, in particular the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement with India. But today we heard you say that you are in favor of free trade agreements. So is it that you are in favor of free trade agreements, but specifically oppose CICA? That's what it looks like, based on what you have said so far. Now, your comments have troubled your own PSP members. They have said that your statements in Parliament on CICA were targeting the Indian community. You protested here that you are not a racist and that these statements and sentiments ascribed to you are a diversion and a distraction. But your party members are quoted as saying that you are targeting the Indian community. And I quote, they say it is totally a racial undertone. Mr. Leong, your statements have been interpreted by your own party members as being racist. People in your party think your statements are racist. Would you accept? I don't expect that you will accept that you are racist, but would you accept that people in your party think that your statements are racist and have said so? It's a simple factual statement. May I seek that clarification from Mr. Leong, Mr.
Yes,
Speaker?
please. Mr. Leong.
Sir, in response to the Minister's clarification, one, we have included CICA in the motion today, as I've mentioned in my speech, because FTAs and CICA are part of the equation when we talk about immigration, so it has to be included. As for CICA and the FTAs in general, we are supportive. We are supportive of FTAs and even CICA in general. But we need more information about all these FTAs. If we do not have more information, we cannot say we are wholeheartedly supporting them. It has to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. 2, the minister commented on I having commented on SECA on many occasions. Can the minister give me the examples of occasions that I've spoken about SECA? Other than starting from my Facebook post on the 22nd of June. Can the minister give me instances that I've spoken about SECA before? And even for 22nd June Facebook post, it was after I have accepted the challenge from minister. So I've started to comment a bit, to put things into perspective. So this is the second point, I think. And the third, in this second point, there's minister also mentioned that Dr. Tanjung Bok has mentioned at the party launch about SECA in August 2019. Yes, he talked about free movement, but he was responding to the feedback from Singaporeans, and the word free movement, free flow, these are not words owned by PSP. The government ministers have been talking about free flow way before Dr. Tanjung Bok has said. I don't think I need to make quotes about George Yeo, about what the Prime Minister have said and all that. Okay? So that is one point I want to make. The third point about party members. PSP is an open party. We are liberal with members. We allow them to express their views. And sometimes there are one or two members or a minority of members who will have different opinions. We have told them that they cannot make their views that public. But some of them chose to do that. We can't stop them because we are a liberal party. We are not a party who will prevent all our members from having their own opinions. So just one or two party members mentioned that what I'm doing in Parliament today is anti-racist. That doesn't mean I'm anti-racist. Thank you. That doesn't mean I'm
not
racist.
anti-racist.
Yeah.
Yes.
I beg your pardon. That doesn't mean I'm racist. Yeah. Thank you. Minister?
Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Leong. So your party members, you say some, think you are racist based on your statements. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, can I ask Mr. Leong to confirm that therefore other Singaporeans may also go away with similar view that what he says is racist? And second, Mr. Leong says they've got nothing to object to SECA and other FTAs. I think it's an important statement, and I would like that recorded. I think we all need to note that. But assuming that, then we have over 20 FTAs.
Point of order.
Mr. Leong?
I think the minister is misquoting me. I say I'm supporting FTAs and in general, including SECA, but I didn't say I'm supporting SECA wholeheartedly. We need more information.
So you're supporting or not supporting?
We have not enough information to support.
So are you supporting or not supporting? If you have not enough information, so are you supporting or not supporting? I'm not very clear.
I'm not supporting.
So you're
Yes.
not supporting SECA or FTAs, is that right?
The FTAs, we need more information as well on a case-by-case basis.
So I'm trying to understand what your position is. Are you so you're not supporting FTAs and including SECA, is that
No,
right?
we are supporting FTAs in general for the benefits the FTA can bring, trade to our country, investments and all that. But we are concerned that modern FTAs do have provisions on the movement of natural persons. And so for each FTA, we want to look into the details. That's what we are saying.
Minister?
Sir, I'm quite confused by the answer.
I'm quite confused as well.
So may I ask, sir, through you to Mr. Leong, one, just tell us, does he and PSP, does he and does PSP support FTAs? A simple answer will do.
Mr. Leong?
We support FTAs in general.
Thank you. Would that include, sir, support for seeker?
Yes. In general.
Yes. Let's then have that recorded as he and PSP support seeker and FTAs in general. Now, may I then ask, why is seeker specifically identified in the motion when I assume there is nothing to distinguish between seeker and other FTAs in Mr. Leong's mind?
Mr. Leong?
As I've said in my speech, we do not have full disclosure on the movement of natural persons provisions in SECA yet, and also some of the other FTAs. So we would like to know more. Before we know more information about that, we cannot shut off discussion on the FTAs and SECA, which the government is trying to do. After the July 6th ministerial statement, next day in the Straits Times, the government straight away say SECA has no effect on our ability to regulate immigration. But the data provided by the government is not conclusive. The government just quoted 1 year ICT number, 500 ICT in 2020, which is a COVID year. The government didn't even provide the data to prove its point. So that's what I'm driving at. And as a result, although the government may say, yeah, we have told you many, many times and we have discussed this again and again, but each time the disclosure is incomplete. That's why we have to continue discussing, because sometimes the time allowed for the discussion and the debate is also not sufficient. And of course, on the 6th July ministerial statements, because we are going to file this motion, we are also holding back some of the things we want to discuss. But today, we can discuss everything. Minister, thanks.
Sorry, sir. Again, I'm a bit confused. My question was a simple one. It's simply that if you look at the motion which I read out, it highlights seeker. I'm just trying to understand whether seeker has a special place in Mr. Leong's affection and mind, or is it treated the same as all the other FTAs? And if it's the same as all the other FTAs, why is seeker getting special mention? That's all. A simple answer would do.
Mr. Leong?
The focus of the debate today is on the impact of our foreign talent policy on jobs and livelihood. So we are focused on all the work pass holders, not one particular nationality. But
Mr. Leong, if you can answer the minister's question, which is a straightforward one, because if it's just FTAs in general, then why is seeker being flagged up specifically?
because there are data, we want to know more about SECA.
No, but you do want to know more data about any of all the other FTAs, right? From what you were alluding to earlier?
Yes, that's
So
why we have...
why no mention of the other FTAs, but seeker in particular?
No, but in our motion, we say FTAs and SECA. Right? So FTAs are inside the motion.
Minister?
I think Mr. Leong doesn't know his own motion. it says in some FTAs, like CECA. So there are some FTAs which don't concern him, and there are some FTAs which concern him. This is your own motion, Mr. Leong.
Yes,
Just tell us what it means and why CECA.
yes, I say some FTAs like SECA. So these are the FTAs, including SECA, that I want information.
Which ones? Sir, if I may ask, which ones?
Mr. Leong.
Including the Australian FTAs, the China FTAs, the US FTAs, for example.
So, sir, may I ask through you, which aspects of the China FTA, the US FTA, and the Australian FTA bothers Mr. Leong, like CECA?
Mr. Leong.
Okay, for the Australian FTA also contained a clause on allowing the ICT to bring in dependence. For the China FTA, we are looking at the China FTA to compare with the SECA FTA because both countries have very big populations. For the US FTA, we have received feedback from residents about why US citizens are allowed to buy properties in Singapore without paying the ABST, the additional buyer's stamp duty. So some of these FTAs, as I say, we have to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Minister.
Thank you. Sir, my understanding, therefore, is that Mr. Leong is equally concerned about the US FTA, the China FTA, the Australian FTA, and CECA, and that CECA is not specifically being singled out. If I may just have that confirmation before I move on.
Mr. Leong.
That is correct, Minister. Thank you. And overall, we have, I think, sir, Mr. Leong's confirmation that he supports FTAs. Now, I then asked, sir, through you, does Mr. Leong accept that his statements on CECA, his and his party's statements, having been interpreted by some of PSP members as being racist, may well be interpreted by Singaporeans as racist as well?
Mr. Leong.
The reason why I state our position at the beginning of my speech is exactly anticipating what the minister is going to ask on this. SECA is an economic agreement, trade agreement, that we want to have more information because the perception is that there are certain terms on the movement of natural persons are not beneficial to Singapore. So we want more information, not necessarily directed at just the SECA as an FTA.
So I'm sorry, sir, that's
Minister.
Point of order. That's nothing to do with what I asked.
Mr. Leong.
Okay, in that case, Minister, sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Some of Mr. Leong's party members interpreted his statements as being racist. And I quoted, one of the quotes is, "You're targeting the Indian community, and it's totally a racial undertone." My question was, if his own party members can think like that, it's entirely possible for other Singaporeans to take a similar view.
Mr. Leong.
Sir, for discussion on any topic, there are people who have a different view. But SECA is an economic agreement that is the concern of many Singaporeans. So we are asking
So-
for more information.
We have heard that. That wasn't my question, sir.
Mr. Leong?
Sorry, Minister.
Do you have a response specifically to Minister's
Sorry, Minister.
question? Mr. Leong, would you be responding specifically
Yes,
to
yes.
his-
Sorry, I want the Minister to repeat the question again.
for a third time, Minister?
Sorry,
And indulge
Minister.
us.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Leong, it's commonsensical, isn't it, that those PSP members will not be the only ones who think that your statements are racist. If they can think like that, your own party members, the other Singaporeans can reasonably think that your statements are racist too. It's a simple point.
Yeah.
Mr. Leong?
So, okay. Actually, just now, my answer is going to that point. Okay. But doesn't mean that some accused somebody who is trying to find out more and trying to discuss about an economic agreement thinks that that person is racist, then we need to shut up the whole discussion.
No, we are not talking about shutting out. In fact, we are having a long debate. We are going to be here for very long.
All right, yeah.
And it'll be even longer if we don't get answers. So nobody is shutting anybody out. Just a logical conclusion.
Mr. Leong?
There
There will be some people who will think that there's racial undertone. Yeah.
Thank you. Now,
Minister?
with that, sir, I want to go back to some of the questions that were raised and not answered the last time in July. My colleague, Ong Ye Kang, said that Seeker does not allow a free flow of Indians into Singapore. He made that very clear to this House and to Mr. Leong. I'll also remind Mr. Leong that it has been explained that nothing in Seeker says that Singapore must unconditionally let PMEs into Singapore. And all foreign PMEs have to meet our work pass conditions in order to come and work here. And just to remind members and Mr. Leong, I will set out I will repeat what Minister Ong had said. He said in this House, by reference to Chapter 9 of Seeker, that it makes it clear that the government's ability to regulate immigration and foreign manpower is not affected by the agreement. The government retains full rights to decide who can enter the country to live, work, become PRs, or become citizens. This is clearly set out in two clauses. They are standard clauses commonly found in all FTAs. And then he refers to Chapter 912 and 913. He then says, there is a strong immigration carve-out and national treatment is not found in Chapter 9 of Seeker, nor any other corresponding chapter in the FTAs that Singapore has entered into. Nothing in this agreement implies that Singapore must unconditionally let PMEs from India. Contrary to PSP's claim, our ability to impose requirements for immigration and work pass has never been in question in Seeker or any other FTAs that we have signed. And he made a couple of other points, if I may refer to. PSP pointed out that Seeker listed 127 categories of professionals, hence claimed that Indian nationals in these professions can all freely come here to work for a year. This is false, because as I explained earlier, all foreign PMETs have to meet our work pass conditions in order to come here and work here. The second common criticism is that intra-corporate transferees from India can also freely enter Singapore to work. Based on my explanation on how the chapter works, this is again not true. Intra-corporate transferees have also to meet our work pass qualifying criteria. And then he said, Mr. Speaker, sir, I hope we can put a stop to all this misinformation about our FTAs in general and Seeker in particular. So bearing that in mind, sorry, sir, can I ask through you for Mr. Leong to respond to questions posed by Ong Ye Kung that Seeker does not allow a free flow of Indians into Singapore?
Mr. Leong.
Sir, as I said just now, the word free flow is not the property of PSP. It has been used by the government as well. Okay? So let's focus on what exactly, we are just talking about the numbers of foreign nationals that have come into Singapore.
Mr. Leong, will you be coming to an answer to that question?
Yes. Speaker, sir, please give me some time.
You have all the time. Carry on.
Yes. So let's focus on the numbers. And if you don't give us the number, how are we going to answer to the Singaporeans that really SECA has no influence over our immigration policies? We ask for ICT numbers, but only 1 year number is given. Can you give all the numbers? You give all the numbers from 2005 to 2020, and the number of ICTs who have later on become PRs and new citizens and obtain new work passes.
Sorry, sir, on a point of order.
Mr. Leong, Minister.
Sir, through you, may I remind Mr. Leong, there are two different issues. One, what does Seeker or the other FTAs allow? And that's a matter of interpretation of the agreement. And that is what we had been debating in July. And Minister Ong asked that there is nothing in Seeker that allows for free flow. The second is within the framework of Seeker or any other FTA, and I note that Mr. Leong only wants to know Seeker and not any other FTA, how many have come in? Those are matters of numbers and details, and we can deal with that separately. And hopefully we won't take another hour for that. But first, as a matter of interpretation, the minister who, as a civil servant, drafted this or was part of the negotiating this agreement, referred chapter and verse, and has explained how the government applies that policy, that it's subject to our own work pass rules, and that's how it has been applied for the last 15 years. So unless Mr. Leong says that Minister Ong Ye Kung lied, or that the government policy is other than what it says it is, let's just get an answer. Do you accept that there is nothing in Seeker that allows for free movement of PMETs? That's all. It's a simple question.
Mr. Leong.
Sir, to the minister, we are arguing not about a legal document, just a legal document, not just the letter of the word. We are arguing about economic effect.
So first, I don't understand that answer, because it says here in his motion, anxiety among Singaporeans on jobs and livelihoods caused by the foreign talent policy and the provisions on movement of natural persons in some free trade agreements like Seeker. That's just untrue based on what Minister Ong has said.
Speaker,
we are arguing about
sir.
your motion, which refers to the provisions of Seeker. Mr. Ong, sir, I'm afraid Mr. Leong doesn't even know what his motion says. Did he even draft it?
Mr. Leong.
So that's the first question. Second question, will he now, in the context of his motion, agree that we are debating the provisions of Seeker, and will he accept that there is nothing in Seeker that allows for free movement of Indians into Singapore?
Mr. Leong.
Okay, the provisions that we put in the motion is actually pertaining to the economic effect of the provision.
Could you explain that again, please?
Economic effects of the provision.
So the provisions are the legal agreement as been explained by the minister, and what are your views about those provisions? They are
What I'm
written in
saying-
they are written in black and white, and we covered that quite extensively at the last previous sittings. What are your views on that, please?
My views is that we are not arguing about a legal document today.
The legal documents dictate how these interactions take place with the other countries. So unless you're doubting the validity of the agreements or you're doubting the way in which it's implemented, I think we are seeking a view on that. If you could enlighten us, please.
We do not think that we can interpret we can draw a conclusion from just the explanation given by the minister. Because
Maybe if I can help to paraphrase that. I mean, the minister has explained what the terms are. Do you agree that those are the terms of the free trade agreements as agreed between the two countries?
No, as I say, I'm not arguing about a legal document. I'm arguing about there's a legal document, but the way you implement the legal document and the economic effect can be different. Because after the legal document,
So as a point of order, I mean, let's
Minister.
stop at the legal document first. I wanted to get, sir, through you to Mr. Leong, because Minister Ong specifically raised this, and Mr. Leong said they need more time to study this. We have had August and September to study it. So, first of all, the English meaning, unless some other language may be different, but the English meaning of the provisions on movement of natural persons in some free trade agreements like CECA mean what they say, which is the legal provisions in CECA. So let's not try and wriggle out of that. That's what it means. Now, second, before we talk about implementation, first, in terms of the legal provisions, I've read out what the minister said, what these provisions are, and does Mr. Leong have any basis to contradict that or challenge that? Or does he accept it?
Mr. Leong?
sir, can I ask my colleague Hazel Phua to come in and answer those questions?
Yes, you may.
So I would like Mr. Leong, because motion stands in his name, he has put this motion, he has referred to provisions. If he doesn't know the answer, he can say he doesn't know the answer.
Mr. Leong?
And I'm not sure the answer is going to be found in a phone.
Ms. Hazel Phua?
So some of these points that Minister Shanmugam has raised is in my speech. Can I suggest that we leave it here for now and we can discuss again?
No, I think
after?
Mr. Leong can answer them. I think they're pertinent to the issues that are at hand presently. You may raise it later. Or you can pass your speech to Mr. Leong.
I will have the same answer. We went back to consider the points put up by.
Mr. Leong, we need to, before we proceed, can we just answer the questions rather than cover the same ground again?
As of now, we do not agree to the interpretation of the legal documents as it is now. Okay?
What does that mean exactly when you say you do not agree with the legal documents? As in, as represented by the minister, you don't agree that that's how it was phrased, or you don't agree with how it's being phrased? So that we can proceed with the argument, so that we can develop the debate further. What exactly does that mean?
Because we are looking at the economic effects of the.
No, I understand. We're talking about the
provision.
provisions that's provided under FTA agreement, in this case, CECA. What exactly is it about the agreements that you disagree with, or whatever that might be?
Okay, I can then say that at this point, I do not have a legal opinion on those provisions.
Okay, even if it's not a legal opinion, what is your opinion on them? A non-legal opinion?
My non-legal opinion would include my interpretation of the economic effect. So it will be a bit different from what the minister is asking.
Minister.
So again, that is a confusing answer. And the minister has said that there is no free movement allowed. We apply, and we are entitled to apply our work pass rules, and that this is how it has been operated for the last, since CECA has come into force, and likewise for other FTAs. Which part of that statement does he disagree with, sir?
We'll try one more time.
Yes.
Otherwise,
Maybe he can
Mr.
look
Leong?
at these statements and say which part of it he disagrees with. Does he disagree as that we have applied it this way? Does he say that minister was lying in Parliament? Or does he say that the interpretation that the minister has given is inaccurate and that we should in fact are obliged to give free movement of all Indians into Singapore?
Mr. Leong.
So what I'm saying is that I'm focusing on the economic effect of those provisions. And looking at the economic effects, there are some initial doubts whether the movement is easier than what the government has represented or not. But we still cannot come to a conclusion yet because we need more data from the government. And the government is withholding the data.
Okay, thank you. Minister, I suggest we move on. I don't
Yes.
think we're going to get any further clarity on this. We'll just have to agree to disagree, and
Yes,
we
sir.
register
Yes.
both points.
I will take it, sir, based on the answers, that Mr. Leong really doesn't know about these legal provisions, despite the wording of his motion. And he has no understanding of the provisions of CECA. And I assume that he has the same concerns about the provisions in the US FTA, the China FTA, and the Australian FTA. And if so, I hope to see those FTAs being referenced in future rather than CECA being singled out, if what he says is true. Now, I have another clarification to seek, sir. The claim, PSP's claim, that CECA allows the 127 categories of Indian professionals to come here freely to work. Minister Ong has pointed out that that is false and that they have to first meet our work pass rules. Does Mr. Leong now accept that? Again, a short question. I hope a short answer.
Mr. Leong.
Speaker, that one is easy. I agree that all these ICTs and the 127 professionals need to go through our work pass rules.
Nice input. Now, thank you, sir.
Speaker, can I ask a question?
So the floor is mine. When I finish,
Later.
if there are clarifications, Mr. Leong can ask me, just like I'm asking him. Now, can I, sir, through you, ask, and I think I heard the answer in Mr. Leong's speech, confirm that Mr. Leong accepts that we need some foreign PMETs for our economy. For example, that we cannot have 0 PMETs. Can I, sir, through you, have him confirm that?
Mr. Leong.
Yes.
Thank you.
Minister.
Now, I, sir, want to remind the House, share with the House some numbers, and Mr. Leong. Over the last 10 years, last decade, there has been an increase of 110,000 EPs and S-Pass holders. 110,000. During the same period, the local PMETs increased by 300,000. Right? Local PMETs increased by 300,000. For EPs and S-Pass holders, 110,000. Second, the number of PMET job vacancies have been around 30,000 over the past 5 years. Third, the size of our PR population has remained stable in the last 5 years. 2016 to 2020, it's at about 520,000. In fact, it's been stable even before that, but we'll just take 5 years. So with these numbers in mind, local PMETs increased by 300,000, foreign PMETs increased by 110,000, EP and S-Pass, PR population stable. And Mr. Leong agrees that we need some foreign PMETs. Today, it's 350,000. If that is too much, then can he tell us what is the right number? Is it 300,000? Is it 200,000? Or is it 100,000?
Mr. Leong.
Sir, can I confirm with Minister that you only have one question? That question? Or are there other questions there?
One question for now.
Okay. Okay. The number of rebalancing that we need to do depends on the government estimate of what is the number of Singaporeans that are being displaced, which is something that are pushed during the debate.
So can I take it, sir, through you, that Mr. Leong can confirm that he doesn't really know what should be the number be?
Mr. Leong.
Sir, of course, government is always controlling the numbers. Controlling the data. I will have to refer to the government to give me some data to come up with an accurate answer. I got some numbers in mind, but I would prefer to wait for the data.
So based on the data that's available, and I've given him this data, and much of it is available in public, can I take it that he is in no position, sir, to tell us whether it should be 350,000 or whether it should be 400,000 or whether it should be less? He has got no basis.
Mr. Leong.
Yes, at this moment, I will need more data from the government before I can come up with an accurate number.
And therefore, it follows logically, sir, that Mr. Leong is not able to assert here or anywhere else that we have too many foreign PMETs in Singapore. That would be right?
Mr. Leong.
Sir, that is not accurate because we are seeing so many underemployed Singaporeans around. The number of gig workers...
How many unemployed Singaporeans do you see?
Sorry?
You're saying that you see many unemployed Singaporeans?
Underemployed.
Underemployed.
Underemployed Singaporeans have come forward to reflect to us, feedback to us. We have also seen in statistics the number of gig workers that are increasing. And also the number of self-employed Singaporeans is also increasing. Okay, so there are Singaporeans that are being displaced. So we got some rough numbers, but we want the government to give us more accurate numbers.
Minister.
So my question was a simple one. Mr. Leong agreed earlier that he doesn't know if 350,000 is too many or too little. So it's a natural conclusion that he doesn't really know if there are too many foreign PMETs here. It's basically based on what he says. So can I ask through you that he just be consistent with what he just said 3 minutes ago?
Mr. Leong.
Sir, I'm not going to say what is the number in my head until the government gives me more data. Not that I don't have an idea of how many Singaporeans are being displaced.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Now, can I ask, sir, through you, I just mentioned there are 30,000 PMET vacancies. Is there, perhaps Mr. Leong can give us an explanation as to why there are so many vacancies which are unfilled in Singapore and have been unfilled for the last 5 years?
Mr. Leong.
Sir. The number provided by these 30,000 PMETs vacancies, again, is a number that now the minister has brought out. Okay, but if all these vacancies and numbers are being presented in a proper time series data set, then we will be able to analyze the numbers better. So at the moment, I can't give him an answer on that. Because you always come up with single data and ask me for answers.
The number of PMET jobs unfilled, that thousands of jobs were being unfilled, was set out in July. So Mr. Leong had said that he will study it carefully. And I think what this House is witnessing is a motion that has been put up, and Mr. Leong doesn't know the meaning of the motion that he has put up, because he says the provisions on movement of natural persons in some FTAs, like seeker, he has given no credible explanation on why seeker is singled out. He has no credible explanation as to why he refers to the provisions, which means legal provisions, the clauses in this seeker, in his motion, and then asserts here that he doesn't know anything about the provisions on seeker. He's got no view on that. Then he shouldn't have referred to that. So it's meaningless, the motion. Doesn't make any sense to him, let alone to us. And he says there are too many foreign PMETs, but now he says he doesn't know if there are too many, and he doesn't know what the number ought to be. He doesn't tell us what further data that he needs. So none of this is to say that there aren't Singaporeans who have lost their jobs, that there aren't Singaporeans who are underemployed, that there aren't Singaporeans, particularly in their 40s and 50s, who are not in a very good situation. We all know that. Those are all true. But the point is to find the right solutions. Displacement is taking place all over the world. We have tried to keep unemployment low. We have tried to create the jobs. And many people have gotten jobs. And we need to help those who haven't gotten jobs. And the way to do it is to try and reskill them and bring in the right industries. Those are legitimate points to make. What is not legitimate is to try and create a racist, xenophobic, them versus us fervor, put down a motion saying that the terms of seeker are wrong, and then come to Parliament and say, I don't know anything about the terms of the seeker. That is doing serious disservice to Singaporeans. That's not the way members should behave, I'm sorry to say. You've got to take this seriously. You've got to know what your own motion says. I'm a lawyer, but you don't need to be a lawyer to know that this term, the provisions on movement of natural persons in free trade agreements, it's got only one meaning. It's commonsensical.
Speaker, sir, can I?
I'm having the floor, please.
You have a chance to respond, Mr. Leong.
Yeah, my chance to respond.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Mr. Leong.
Thank you, sir. Minister, you make a lot of accusations there. Huh? One is that we go back to go back to square one again about my motion statement. I bring the motion statement to this Parliament about the economic effect of the provisions in the FTAs. I'm not bringing to Parliament the legal interpretation of the provisions. But if you have a legal interpretation, I'm fine. I'm just telling you that I'm concentrating on the economic effect of the provisions. Second point, you say you provided the data. But I asked for a lot of data that's not provided. Okay, 3. The displacement in Singapore, and that is a key point that we are debating today. Government say it's due to global forces. I say, or PSP say, a large part of it is not due to global forces. So that's what we are debating about. So don't jump the gun and come and make the conclusion now. Thank you.
Minister.
Mr. Leong, sorry, sir, I should speak with Speaker. I'm sorry. Address the Speaker. Looking at the motion, sir, Mr. Leong can fulminate as much as he wants, but it says what it says. And it says the provisions on movement of natural persons in some free trade agreements like CECA, and that is consistent with the position that Mr. Leong put forward in July and what he has said in his Facebook post and what PSP has said, that CECA allows free movement of Indians into Singapore. So before we get all heated up, let me refer to what was discussed here the last time round. The motion is consistent with what Dr. Tan Cheng Bock had said on the 3rd of August 2019, which Minister Ong referenced, and I quote Dr. Tan, amongst the terms of CECA, it allowed the free movement of professionals in 127 sectors to enter and work in Singapore. Mr. Leong has confirmed that that is not accurate because he says it's subject to work pass rules. But this was what they were thinking. And as Minister Ong pointed out, on the 7th of July, the same Dr. Tan said, CECA is an agreement between Singapore and India to bring in, to allow, I think, 127 categories of professionals to come to Singapore and be given that free hand, practically free hand to come and work here. And that is what the motion says. The provisions on movement of natural persons in some free trade agreements. So, I mean, one has got to be both honest and accurate. And, if Mr. Leong doesn't know what the motion means, if it has been drafted by someone and he has put his name to it, he can say so. But this is what the motion says. If I may move on, sir.
Sir, can I respond?
Mr. Leong, quick one.
Yeah. I disagree with what the minister said about his interpretation of the motion, and that I don't understand the motion and all that. I already state again and again that I'm coming here, the motion statement that I put up is about the economic effects of the provision. I don't expect this parliament to just argue about legal interpretation, This parliament is about jobs and livelihood of our people, about the economy. Okay, so what we are arguing, actually a larger part of it should be about economics, social, economic issues. We are not going to stand here and keep arguing about a legal interpretation of a clause.
Mr. Leong, if I may,
Yes.
the provisions are first step, isn't it? Because if the legal provisions do not provide for that, then it provides a basis for us to discuss about the economic effect. I mean, it doesn't preclude discussing that part because your motion addresses that. So that's the issue at hand which we're trying to understand is what's your understanding of the provision? Because it is in black and white, so what are your views on that? We can subsequently discuss about economic effect, it can take all day if we wish. But what are your views on the legal provisions, which are spelled out in black and white, not today, but was illustrated by Minister Ong previously?
Okay, sir. So as I said just now, at this point, I don't have a legal opinion on the provisions provided under the agreement. Because
do you agree that those are the provisions as that was spelled out in the agreement?
yeah, but then in order to have a legal interpretation of provisions, you must look at other parts of the agreement, and then you must look at other.
So for those
practice.
specific parts of the agreement, do you agree that those are in black and white what was agreed?
At the moment, I have no opinion.
So
Minister.
that might be useful. So through you, sir, therefore, I can confirm that if Mr. Leong has no opinion, then naturally he has no view as to whether CECA, the terms of CECA, are negative for Singapore. Terms. I'm not talking about actual implementation. We can discuss that. But since you have no opinion, or Mr. Leong has no opinion, it must logically follow that as far as he is concerned, there are no provisions in CECA that he is concerned about. Must follow. May I ask for confirmation of that, sir?
You may, but I think we know the answer. Mr. Leong?
My answer is, at the moment, I in terms of the legal interpretation that this agreement do not have further implementation implications and all that, I can't get I don't have the opinion. Okay,
But you do
regards-
have a view, but you do have a negative view about it, despite the fact that you don't have a legal or otherwise opinion of it.
I don't have a view yet. I'm trying to get a view if the government is prepared to release more data about ICT and about all that. Then I will have an economic view.
Thank
and
you, Minister. I suggest we move on, because I don't think we're going to make much progress here.
Thank you, sir. Now, sir, through you again, may I ask Mr. Leong to confirm? Members of this House will recall that Mr. Leong said what he said about the CEO of DBS Bank. He professed his deep disappointment that the DBS is still without a homegrown CEO. Can I ask, sir, whether Mr. Leong still believes what he said, that naturalized Singapore citizens should not hold top positions?
Mr. Leong?
Sir, that is definitely not the case. When you are citizens, naturalized or homegrown, you are citizens. I have raised the issue during the maiden speech because I was talking about the succession plan, about skills transfer, which is part of what we are going to discuss today. About DBS, when he appointed the current CEO, he was still a foreigner. Why wasn't a chance given to a homegrown Singaporean? Okay, and the bank had a succession plan that groomed the Singaporeans to take over the job. That was what I was trying to
make a point
drive
about a
at.
clarification.
Minister.
None of that answers the point I made. I am quoting Mr. Leong. He professed his deep disappointment when Mr. Piyush Gupta was and is the CEO during his maiden speech, that DBS is still without a homegrown CEO, meaning he is disappointed that it was Mr. Gupta and not a homegrown CEO. So let's not beat about the bush. So I'm asking whether he continues to have those beliefs or has he changed his mind?
Mr. Leong?
Sir, if ministers means that I am differentiating naturalized Singaporeans and homegrown Singaporeans, then I can confirm the answer is no.
Thank you. Therefore, Mr. Leong has changed his mind, it appears, sir, from last year. Now,
Because, sir, can I clarify?
Mr. Leong,
I didn't change my mind. My stance has always been like that.
so may I, sir, then ask through you, what is the meaning of the statement that DBS is still without a homegrown CEO? We are not talking about succession plans here. I'm just asking for an interpretation of Mr. Leong's words. DBS is still without a homegrown CEO.
Mr. Leong.
Okay, what I was referring to was actually referring to the point he was appointed, not at this moment.
Sorry, can you say that again, please?
Okay, what I was referring to was at the point of appointment, the year of appointment, the point when he was appointed, he was still a foreigner. But anyway, when I make that statement, I was not in any way have Mr. U.S. Gupta in mind. I was just talking about the many CEOs that DBS have got, and never had a succession plan. That was the intention. But okay, being one of the top lawyers in Singapore, maybe law minister could, make some interpretations and ask me in that way. Yeah.
Sorry, sir, can I ask that the natural interpretation of a statement that I have deep disappointment that DBS is still without a homegrown CEO at a time when a naturalized Singaporean is the CEO, the normal interpretation, whatever may be the workings of Mr. Leong's mind, the normal interpretation would be that he is disappointed that it's Mr. Gupta and not a homegrown Singaporean. Wouldn't that be the natural interpretation, sir?
Mr. Leong. Would that be a fair interpretation of what you said?
Sir, that was not the intention. That was not the intention.
Point of clarification, sir. I did expressly say, we leave aside whatever Mr. Leong may have intended. I'm simply asking whether what I've said is a fair interpretation, natural interpretation of what he said.
Mr. Leong.
How it is interpreted, I think it depends on who is listening to it.
So
I think many
the question
Singaporeans-
I think the question is whether it's fair for anyone in the public to interpret it the way as Minister has put across. Because that was what was said. I remembered. I think many of us would have remembered
Yes,
that. I
yes,
think
yes.
a few of us raised our eyebrows because we were wondering what exactly you meant. So would it be fair that that's how people would interpret it? Notwithstanding whatever your intent might be. Because what we say in Parliament matters, because that's how the public will perceive it. Which is why the choice of words and phrases is important.
That was not my interpretation.
That's not the question at hand.
Yeah.
Would that be interpreted the way it's been put across by Minister?
Well, I would say a minority of the people might interpret it that way.
Understand? Minister, let's carry on.
Speaker, point of order.
Mr. Leong?
All these issues that the minister have raised is not related to the motion today. Now he is going into the statements I make at my maiden speech. So can I ask that we go back to the debate proper?
Minister.
So I will just move on. I will just, for the record, set out exactly what was said by Mr. Leong. He said, and I quote, "I am deeply disappointed now." That means at the point that he was speaking, because 22 years later, and I assume after Mr. Oh's appointment in 1998, DBS is still without a homegrown CEO. It's open and shut. He meant 2020, and Mr. Gupta was appointed in 2009. I think we can at least be honest with each other when the words are in black and white. I would say, sir, to this House, it's not wrong that we welcome talent when people are committed enough to take up citizenship. It is wrong to have an issue with new citizens and PRs from specific countries, because it is quite clear what Mr. Leong and PSP were doing. It's race baiting and nationality baiting without beating about the bush. And that's what the words of this motion suggest. None of this is to deny the legitimate concerns of Singaporeans. None of this is to deny that there are people who have lost jobs, that there are people in their 40s and 50s in particular who are very concerned, and that we have to do everything we can to help them. And we have to stand by with them. But I think race baiting, nationality baiting, putting down motions and then coming to Parliament and saying, well, I don't know, I don't have a view on the legal provisions, when your party has made it a point from the day one to attack the legal provisions. I think none of those help. Really, based on his speech, sir, Mr. Leong has painted such a dark picture about what's going on in Singapore, which really bears little resemblance to reality. Is it that locals are being pushed out of PMET jobs in a large scale? We have created over 300,000 local PMET jobs. In fact, locals take up 80% of all PMET jobs. Can we do better? I think we ought to do better by the people who have lost their jobs or who are underemployed. Is it that our universities have produced graduates who cannot get jobs? Over the past 10 years, 9 in 10 graduates have been employed within 6 months after graduation, with starting salaries rising steadily. I think it is demeaning and dismissive of all the good people in our universities and polytechnics working hard to train our students to say they are producing people who cannot get employed. And it's untrue. Would Singapore be consistently ranked highly on the UN's Human Development Index if Singaporeans were oppressed in the labor market, if incomes had not risen and productivity stalled? What we have is not perfect. It's not perfect anywhere in the world. And we have to consistently work to improve. But it's not the picture that Mr. Leong is describing. And I would say Mr. Leong's views have been so completely distorted by his lack of understanding of Sikha and his eagerness to attack Indians and Sikha. And I would say what his party and Mr. Leong are doing is one of the worst types of political opportunism, using race as a bait. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Leong,
Sir,
would you like to respond?
I strongly object to what the minister said about PSP position on race.
Noted.
The reason why we raised this motion got nothing to do with race or xenophobia. We will continue to debate on why we think the situation in Singapore is far worse than what the government has presented to the Singaporeans. Okay, we'll debate again. Thanks,
Thank
sir.
you. Mr. Pritam Singh.